Chapter 156. Chang and City? Some secret? Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. That's right. The Emperor of Tang nodded slightly and said, but I think it should be fake. Chang and City is big, but if there really is a secret, how can it be hidden for 500 years? The Emperor of Tang said matter-of-factly. For more than 500 years, the outer city of Chang and City had been rebuilt many times. If there were any secrets, they would have been exposed long ago. As for the inner city, although it had always been the same as the residence of the royal family, there must be an army patrolling and guarding at all times. In this case, there was no secret. I see. Su Qin's expression didn't change. After a while, the Emperor of Tang returned to the Palace of Immortals. After the Emperor of Tang left completely, Su Qin slowly got up, took a step, and disappeared. At the same time, thousands of feet high in the sky, Su Qin stood in the air and looked down at the entire Chang and city. Whether it was the venerable Arhat or the martial arts legends, even if they were only at the first heaven, they could ride the wind and fly freely. Let alone Su Qin, who was at the peak of the fifth heaven. The secret of Chang and city? I'd like to see what the secret of Chang and city is. With a thought, Su Qin's huge divine thought quickly spread out and covered the entire Chang and city in an instant. At this moment, any action of the millions of people in Chang and city fell into Su Qin's mind. It was as if he had turned his palm over and saw everything. Although Su Qin had lived in the palace for so many years, he would scan Chang and city with his divine thought every once in a while. But it was the first time for him to be so careful. Buzz! The terrifying divine thought quickly spread to every corner of Chang and city like running water. No! Su Qin frowned. The next moment, the divine thought condensed again and began to spread slowly underground. 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters, 500 meters, 1,000 meters. Finally, 2,500 meters below the ground of Chang and city, Su Qin's divine thoughts suddenly sensed a strange aura. This is? Devil Qi. Su Qin narrowed his eyes. Su Qin had seen this kind of devil Qi in many places, such as the Devil Suppression Tower in the Shaolin Temple and the Devil Lord who had killed his way into Shaolin. However, Su Qin did not expect that he would find this kind of devil Qi under Chang and the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. Moreover, compared to the demon-suppressing pagoda and the demon master, this strand of demon Qi underground was even purer. To be precise, although the two were both demon Qi, they were as different as heaven and earth. Just like Arhat's true essence and rank 9 inner strength. Interesting. Su Qin continued to probe the ground with his divine sense. Finally, 3,000 meters underground, Su Qin suddenly discovered a magnificent palace through his telepathic thoughts. This majestic palace occupied an area of several miles. It was empty, but there was a black well in the center, and the strands of devil Qi were spreading out from this black well. When Su Qin saw this scene, his figure disappeared again. After a while, in front of the majestic palace 3,000 meters underground, Su Qin's figure quietly appeared. It's so deep underground, I'm afraid that even a peak grade 1 great grandmaster would find it difficult to come in. Su Qin glanced at the majestic palace and thought silently in his heart. That black well, Su Qin thought for a moment and walked towards the center of the palace unhurriedly. He had already scanned the inside and outside of the palace with his divine sense. Except for the black well in the center, everything else was normal. Su Qin came in front of a stone tablet that was 10 meters high. There were many characters engraved on the stone tablet, all of which were written in ancient characters that were thousands of years old. They were obscure and difficult to understand, but this was not difficult for Su Qin. As early as in the Shaolin Temple, he had read the entire scripture pavilion, including the evolution of the characters. The appearance of the devils well connected to the cave world, and countless devils poured into the world. The world was in chaos. Fortunately, the devil's well could only accommodate devils below the myth realm. After the bloody struggle of countless ancestors, the devil's well was finally sealed by the imperial dynasty blocking the passage between the cave world and the world. Ancient characters flashed one by one, letting Su Qin know the cause and effect. According to the stone tablet, a large number of devils suddenly appeared in the world thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. And these devils came from this devil's well. On the other side of the devil's well was the cave world, which was the real world of the devil race. It seems that the level of this cave world is very high, at least much higher than this continent. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. According to the records on the stone tablet, thousands or tens of thousands of years ago, that era should have been the era of martial artists, and there were more than 10 myths in the world. In the wonderful book garden. But in the end, they were still directly crippled by the devils who poured out of the devil's well. It should be known that the devil's well could only accommodate devils below the myth realm. In other words, the humans at that time were only facing a group of first-grade devils at most. And under the premise of at least 10 myths, the humans were still defeated. One could imagine how ferocious the cave world under the devil's well was. No wonder Chang and city is the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. It turns out that with Chang and city as the center, the imperial dynasty's dragon's luck can barely seal the devil's well. Su Qin thought silently. At this moment he probably figured out why the empire of Tang's founder wanted to establish a country. It was nothing more than worrying about losing the suppression of the imperial dynasty's dragon's luck, causing the seal to loosen, and finally, devils to enter the world. Keep reading. Su Qin slowly looked at the stone tablet. The records on the ancient tablet, in addition to introducing the horror of the devil's well, also talked about the cave world connected to the devil's well. Since the devils in the cave world could come up through the devil's well, then the people above could naturally enter the cave world through the devil's well. During the fight against the devil clan, many martial arts legends had sneaked into the underground devil's den, only to find that the world connected to the devil's well was far superior to this continent in terms of scale and high-level combat power. And in the cave world, a civilization similar to that of the human race had also developed, and in the vast area, there were powerful countries one after another. All the myths who had entered the cave world concluded that the mushroom demon cave world had existed for at least 100,000 years, or even more. After discovering this, the myths who had sneaked in were scared out of their wits and quickly returned, and then sealed the devil's well with the imperial dynasty's dragon's luck, completely cutting off the connection with the cave world. Su Qin had a rough idea of what happened next. The invasion of the devils directly crippled the martial artists of this continent, and even a few myths had fallen. The remaining myths either hid or disappeared. Time? At least 100,000 years? Su Qin's eyes lit up when he saw this. Chapter 157. At least 100,000 years? How much Dao accumulation would there be after such a long time? Su Qin's heart skipped a beat. Just now, he was worried about whether his cultivation speed would slow down after he stepped into the seventh heaven of Arhat, and whether he should sign in somewhere else. But now, the appearance of the underground cave world made Su Qin feel like there was a glimmer of hope. For others, the underground cave world is filled with devil chi, and it's not suitable for venerable Arhat to live in. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. This was also the reason why the legends who sneaked into the underground cave world escaped. In addition to realizing the power of the underground cave world, they also realized that it would be difficult for them to survive there. Although legends have reached the level of Chi Eater, the premise is that there is enough world's essence Chi to absorb. But there is probably no such thing as world's essence Chi in the underground cave world. But I'm different. As early as when I was in the Shaolin Temple, I signed in and obtained the Devil Buddha Golden Body, and the most terrifying thing about the Devil Buddha Golden Body is that it can transform devil chi into one's own true essence without any damage. Su Qin's eyes became brighter and brighter. With the Devil Buddha Golden Body, the underground cave world was probably no different from the outside world for Su Qin. As long as Su Qin was willing, he could transform his true essence into devil chi and easily disguise himself as a myth realm great demon. Not bad, but there's no hurry now. Wait until I break through and reach the sixth heaven. Su Qin took a deep look at the majestic palace. turned around, and left. Imperial Palace. In the right spring square. Su Qin sat cross-legged. I originally wanted to break through in a few days. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and the true essence in his body slowly circulated. Su Qin stretched out his right hand, and an extremely exquisite jade gourd suddenly appeared in front of him. Gulp gulp. Su Qin pulled out the cork of the jade gourd and poured the liquid into his mouth. If other martial arts legends saw how Su Qin treated the extremely precious primordial spiritual liquid by pouring it down his throat, they would probably be so jealous that their eyes would turn red. The primordial spirit liquid was condensed from heaven and earth and was extremely rare. Ordinary martial arts legends might not be able to find a few drops even after spending decades or centuries. In the end, when it came to Su Qin, he was actually absorbing it by the bottle. As the large mouthful of innate spirit liquid entered his body, Su Qin's body suddenly emitted a rumbling sound as a large amount of true essence continuously converged and contracted, as if undergoing some kind of transformation. However, Su Qin was still not satisfied. He picked up the jade gourd again and poured all the primordial spirit liquid into his mouth. Rumble! In the blink of an eye, the innate spirit liquid turned into an endless amount of heaven and earth yuan qi, filling every part of Su Qin's body. In the next moment, the past Amitabha Sutra circulated madly, ceaselessly absorbing the natural spirit liquid and transforming it into extremely pure true essence that continued to flow through his meridians. A few hours later, Su Qin's body began to glow, illuminating the surroundings and setting off Su Qin vaguely, making him look like a real immortal god that could not be looked at directly and could not be guessed. Not enough. Su Qin frowned slightly and waved his hand slightly. Suddenly, at least a dozen red fruits flew out and fell into Su Qin's mouth. Boom! It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. The massive amount of spirit qi gathered by dozens of red fruits was enough to cause an ordinary martial arts legend to explode in an instant. However, at this moment, Su Qin stood still and continued to absorb the spirit qi of the red fruits. In the blink of an eye, the aura in Su Qin's body skyrocketed like a great river, filling up the void and suppressing everything. Sush! Is this the 6th level of heaven? Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and looked at his hands as he muttered to himself. At this moment, Su Qin could feel that his body was filled with a power that could destroy the world. Of course, Su Qin knew that this was an illusion. Not to mention the 6th level of heaven Arhat, even the 9th level of heaven Arhat was far from being able to destroy the world. However, even if he could not destroy the world, it was more than enough to destroy the entire Xianxia city. If the 6th level of heaven is so powerful, how powerful would the 7th level of heaven be? As for the last earth immortal, what kind of existence would it be? Su Qin was fascinated. However, although Su Qin was very emotional, he did not forget about the important matter. Let's go to the underground palace again. Su Qin's mind moved, and when he appeared again, he was at the entrance of the majestic underground palace. Next, Su Qin walked towards the black well in the center with ease. Su Qin stood in front of the black well. On the surface of the black well, there was a faint golden aura that sealed the well tightly. The moment Su Qin saw the golden aura, he recognized that it should be the power of the dynasty's draconic providence. If it weren't for the suppression of the dynasty's draconic providence, this place would have been occupied by the demon race long ago, and Su Qin wouldn't have been able to discover it at all. I can feel that this dynasty's draconic providence doesn't reject me, and as long as I want to, I can easily pass through the seal of the dynasty's draconic providence? Su Qin touched his chin. Could it be because of the true dragon qi in my body? Su Qin guessed in his heart, but he was more than half sure. Although he had signed in a lot of Emperor Path cultivation techniques in the past few years, he hadn't cultivated much. In his entire body, only the true dragon qi had something to do with the dynasty's draconic providence. And I also faintly feel that there seems to be a living creature on the other side of the well? Could it be that there are demons guarding over there? Su Qin's eyes were thoughtful. Although he realized that there were demons on the other side of the well, Su Qin wasn't afraid at all. With his current strength, even in the underground cave world, he was definitely considered a powerhouse. And the aura of the demons that Su Qin felt wasn't even in the upper realm. At most, it was lingering in the middle realm. Let's lure them over first. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and he suddenly made a decision. Immediately afterward, Su Qin raised his right hand and slowly touched the dynasty's draconic providence above the Devil's Well. Suddenly, a gap appeared in the dynasty's draconic providence that had sealed the Devil's Well tightly. Voila! A large amount of terrifying demonic chi gushed out crazily. At the same time, a wild laughter came from the depths of the Devil's Well. Ha! The seal has loosened, delicious human world. This demon is coming. Two demonic shadows jumped out of the gap in an instant, looking extremely excited. I heard from several lords that the flesh and blood of the human world has a great effect on our demonic arts. This time we can give it a try. Yes, only we know about the seal here, and we can completely occupy this entrance alone. After the two demonic shadows jumped out, they were talking with anticipation. This place. One of the demonic shadows saw the majestic hall around them and was slightly taken aback. That is? The other demonic shadow suddenly saw a man not far away looking at them with calm eyes. Human? However, before the two demonic shadows could react, they saw the man with calm eyes slowly stretch out his right hand and slightly grab towards them. Rumble. The two demonic shadows only felt that the world was collapsing. Everywhere they looked, the palm that was slowly grabbing them was getting bigger and bigger, filling their vision. Chapter 158. They're similar to the human race. Su Qin looked at the two demons who were knocked unconscious by him as soon as they came out, and judged in his heart. These two demons were about 2 meters tall, with faint demon scales on their cheeks. As for other places, they were the same as humans. I thought it was some strange shape. Su Qin nodded slightly, quite satisfied. If he really wanted to go to the cave world to sign in, he would definitely disguise himself as a demon. If the demons looked very different from humans, Su Qin would have a headache, but now it seems that there was no problem in this regard. Thinking of this, Su Qin looked at the two unconscious demons and said, "Wake up." Wang. The eyes of the two demons moved, and they slowly woke up. Where is this? The two demons opened their eyes and were shocked. They only felt a palm reaching through the sky just now. As for what happened next, they didn't know. Now that they suddenly woke up, they suddenly realized that the situation was not what they imagined. I ask you answer. Su Qin looked at the two demons and said, as early as the stone tablet outside, Su Qin learned the demon language. After half a day of absorption, although he was not very proficient, there was no problem in communicating with the demons. Yes. The two demons looked at each other, feeling bitter in their hearts. At this moment, how could they not know their situation? After a while, Su Qin got everything he wanted to know, and raised his hand, and under the desperate eyes of the two demons, he turned them into powder. It turns out that the cave world connected to this demon well corresponds to a place called Demon Cloud City. Su Qin's thoughts slowly rose and fell as he thought silently in his heart. The strength of these two demons is low, not even in the upper realm. They belong to the bottom of the cave world, so they guard a certain seal and don't leave, just thinking that if the seal loosens, they can take the opportunity to enter the human world. And according to them, the city lord of the Demon Cloud City is the strongest person in the vicinity, belonging to the Demon King level existence. And the Demon King is equal to the Venerable Arhat, a martial arts legend. Su Qin's thoughts raced. This was all the information Su Qin got from the two demons. As for other information, such as what was above the Demon King level, what were the big cities outside the Demon Cloud City, and so on, the two demons had no idea at all. But I have at least confirmed one thing. Not to mention how long the cave world has been passed down, this Demon Cloud City alone has experienced more than 10,000 years. According to the Division of Heritage, it is almost no weaker than the Emperor of Tang's palace. Su Qin was shocked. Looks like I'll have to make a trip to the underground cave. Su Qin sat down cross-legged. With a thought, the divine sense in his body began to divide. This kind of division was not like strands of divine sense, but Su Qin had almost separated a small part of his divine sense. If it were other Arhat, a martial arts legend, they would not be able to do this. How important was divine sense? Not to mention dividing a small part, even if it was divided into 1/10, it would be enough to make a martial arts legend depressed and their strength greatly reduced. But Su Qin was different. When he was in the forbidden area of the back mountain of the Shaolin Temple, Su Qin signed in and obtained the Devil Buddha's demonic will division parasitism technique, which could divide his own demonic will to a great extent. The Devil Buddha was suppressed and sealed for 900 years. In extreme despair, he still divided his demonic will every 100 years, broke free from the seal, and bewitched the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. One could imagine the horror of this secret technique. What Su Qin was doing at the moment was not exactly the demonic will division parasitism technique, but a brand new secret technique improved on the basis of this secret technique, which could divide nearly half of his divine sense. This nearly half of his divine sense was completely independent, equivalent to Su Qin's divine sense incarnation, and would not have a time limit like the Devil Buddha. Several hours later, in front of Su Qin, another Su Qin that looked exactly the same appeared. The same aura, the same appearance, the same true essence fluctuations, and the same divine sense circulation. But if someone observed carefully, they would find that the body of the other Su Qin was very illusory, as if it did not have a physical body at all. It's done. I've finally divided it. Su Qin's face turned pale, and a trace of joy flashed in his eyes. Even for him, dividing nearly half of his divine sense was a great loss. If it weren't for the thousands of divine pills in the system space that could restore divine sense, Su Qin probably wouldn't have dared to do so. Next, it's very important. Su Qin's expression was extremely solemn. With a stroke of his right hand, he directly cut off a piece of flesh from his body. And how terrifying was Su Qin's physical body. As soon as this piece of flesh was cut off, the wound began to heal. Countless crystal clear blood flowed, and in a few breaths, it was restored to its original state. Su Qin looked at the piece of flesh that he had cut off. Go! Su Qin said silently in his heart. Suddenly, this piece of blood slowly flew to the opposite divine sense incarnation. The most critical step. Su Qin looked at the piece of flesh. Divine sense, flesh rebirth. Su Qin just had this thought. The piece of flesh in front of the divine sense incarnation began to vibrate, and countless granulation sprouts spread from the edge of the flesh, slowly spreading to the surroundings. The flesh rebirth divine sense was the divine sense Su Qin obtained from the White Jade Square in the Imperial Palace. It was also Su Qin's second divine sense besides the Eye of Truth. This divine sense can restore the physical body to a great extent, and it can be said to be half immortal. However, Su Qin was not sure if this piece of flesh could be reborn into a complete physical body. Because the premise of flesh rebirth to restore the physical body is that the vital parts are not injured. Although Su Qin did not suffer any injuries now, he didn't know if he could rebuild a physical body with this piece of flesh. Time passed slowly. This time, Su Qin waited far longer than the time for the divine sense incarnation. After more than half a day, a physical body that was exactly the same as him appeared in front of Su Qin. And at this moment, the divine sense incarnation next to him got up and slowly merged into this physical body. After a while, this physical body slowly opened its eyes. It's done. Su Qin had a very strange feeling at this moment. The two physical bodies have independent divine sense, but they both have the same consciousness and thoughts. It was as if he had an extra pair of eyes. This should be considered an external incarnation great ability, right? Su Qin whispered to himself. In fact, Su Qin didn't know at this moment whether this was an incarnation or not, because his control of these two bodies was like his left hand and right hand, without any obscure delay. Even from a certain point of view, Su Qin couldn't tell which of these two bodies was the clone and which was the main body. Go to the underground cave world for me to take a look. As soon as Su Qin had this thought, the opposite Su Qin smiled slightly, turned around, and walked towards the Devil's Well not far away. Qila, the dragon providence at the mouth of the Devil's Well, fluctuated slightly, forming an exit as tall as a person. Su Qin took a step forward and entered the underground cave world through this exit. Chapter 159. Chang'an City. In a majestic underground hall, Su Qin sat cross-legged beside the Black Devil's Well. What a pity! Even with my divine sense, I can only create one divine sense incarnation at most. If I create more, it will have irreversible effects. Su Qin thought silently. The divine sense incarnation was fundamentally different from an ordinary wisp of divine sense. The wisp of divine sense that Su Qin left in his family Su was just a pure wisp of divine sense. With the passage of time, it will be consumed. Even if Su Qin dies, all the stray divine sense will quickly dissipate and cease to exist. But the divine sense incarnation was different. Strictly speaking, the divine sense incarnation was already a separate individual. Although both the divine sense incarnation and Su Qin's original body shared the same consciousness, even if Su Qin died due to some accident, the divine sense incarnation could still continue to exist. In short, the divine sense incarnation was equivalent to Su Qin's second life. In fact, even if he didn't find the cave world, Su Qin was prepared to create a divine sense incarnation during this period of time. Even if the incarnation encounters a powerful enemy in the cave world, it won't be dangerous for me. If I lose an incarnation, it won't take long for me to cultivate it back. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. This was also the reason why Su Qin chose the cave world instead of overseas. If Su Qin let the incarnation wander overseas, if he was chased by a powerful enemy, it was very likely that the enemy would be led to this continent. But the cave world, even if it's an Earth immortal realm demon, it's impossible to cross the Devil's Well and pose a threat to Su Qin's true body. Therefore, Su Qin's situation was always absolutely safe. I wonder what kind of surprise this cave world will give me? Su Qin's face was full of expectation. That's right. This Devil's Well has definitely existed for more than 10,000 years. Even the existence of Chang'an City can't compare to it. I should be able to sign in there. Su Qin turned his gaze and looked at the Black Devil's Well next to him. The reason why Chang'an City was the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties was because it was convenient to extract the power of draconic providence from all the dynasties to suppress the demonic well. Therefore, the Devil's Well must have appeared before Chang'an City was built. Thinking of this, Su Qin walked to the Devil's Well and said in his heart, "System, sign in." Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the 9 notes of the demonic path. 9 notes of the demonic Tao? Su Qin did not look surprised at all. This demon's well was connected to the cave world. Signing in here was most likely related to the cave world. The next moment, Su Qin's mind surged with a large amount of insights regarding the 9 notes of the demonic path. Words filled with monstrous demonic energy flashed through his mind. This. Su Qin's pupils shrank slightly. Originally, Su Qin thought that the 9 notes of the demonic Tao was a pure demonic cultivation technique, but from the looks of it now, he had underestimated it. Although the core of the 9 notes of the demonic Tao was still the demonic Tao, the philosophy contained within could be said to encompass all things. With the demonic Tao as the foundation, he analyzed the myriad Daoists of the world. This was the 9 notes of the demonic path. The 9 notes of the demonic path was not a divine technique. It didn't have any specific moves, but what it represented was far from what the demonic path could describe. There are thousands of great Daoists, but all paths lead to the same destination. After comprehending the 9 notes of the demonic path, for a while, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and sighed softly. Whether it was God or demon, immortal or demon, when cultivated to the extreme, the only difference was the manifestation of power, but the essence was the same. Su Qin didn't expect that the level of the 9 notes of the demonic path would be so high. It had a sense of transcendence. Among the countless techniques I have, I'm afraid that only the Buddha's palm can barely suppress it. Su Qin looked amazed. One must know that the Buddha's palm, was claimed to be a personal technique of the Buddha, and it had some connection with the legendary Buddha. But what was the origin of the 9 notes of the demonic path? It was actually close to the level of the Buddha's palm. Not bad. I really made a profit this time. Su Qin nodded slightly, extremely satisfied. All this time, he had spent most of his free time comprehending the Buddha's palm, and he had long since gotten bored of it. Now that he had the 9 notes of the demonic path, he could change things up. Whether it was the Buddha's palm, or the 9 notes of the demonic path, the truth of the great path contained in them was definitely not as simple as the Buddhist path and the demonic path. They stood from the perspective of the Buddhist path and the demonic path, looking at the other great paths of the world. Su Qin was also comprehending the great paths of the world when he comprehended them, but the focus was different. There's no rush for now. I've divided nearly half of my divine will just now. I'll recover it first. Su Qin's heart moved, and a large number of pills suddenly appeared and were placed in front of him. For other martial arts legends, the consumption of divine will could only be slowly recovered by themselves. As for external pills and the like, pills that could recover divine will were extremely precious. Even if martial arts legends had them, they would carefully store them away and only use them at critical moments. I'll cultivate in seclusion here for the time being. Su Qin looked at the pills in front of him and thought silently in his heart. This majestic hall was located 3,000 meters underground. Unless Su Qin made a move and penetrated the ground, no matter how big the commotion, it would not affect the outside world. It was simply a perfect place for seclusion. At the same time, underground cave world. Su Qin raised his head and looked at the gray sky. This is the cave world? Su Qin's divine will slowly spread out, covering a radius of more than 10 miles. What a dense devil chi, Su Qin whispered to himself. In the cave world, devil chi was equivalent to the world's essence chi above. No wonder in the cave world, even the devils in the middle realm are at the bottom. Su Qin shook his head. In this environment, even a pig can become a martial artist after a long time. The environment was very important. Although there were some peerless geniuses that were hard to come by in tens of thousands of years who could continue to break through in extremely harsh environments, they were still very few. Or even none. The vast majority of creatures in the world needed to rely on the environment to continue to grow stronger. Perhaps the environment of the world could not determine the upper limit of the world, but it could definitely determine the lower limit of the world. Since the cave world has such a cultivation environment, why do they still want to spy on the human world? Su Qin seemed to have thought of something and frowned slightly. Originally, he thought that the environment of the cave world should be very harsh, which led to a large number of devils escaping from here, but now it seemed that this guess was not valid. For example, the people living in the capital of a dynasty like Chang and city would not want to go to the remote countryside, unless there was something in the countryside that attracted them. It seems that the world I live in has many secrets that I don't know. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Chapter 160. Su Qin thought for a long time, but he really couldn't think of any place in the human world that was worth spying on. Living beings? Flesh and blood? These things may be greatly desired by low-level demons, but in the eyes of those real demon kings or even above demon kings, they were nothing. Su Qin comprehended the 9 notes of the demonic path, so he naturally knew that the so-called demons were also a kind of living beings. Their cultivation method was similar to that of humans, but the situation they displayed was different. And the demonic well that connected the underground demon cave to the human world was obviously the work of some powerful demons. In other words, even the truly powerful demons in the demon cave were also spying on everything in the human world. Forget it. Let's not think about this anymore. The most important thing now is to convert true essence into demonic power. Su Qin calmed down and looked around. At this moment, Su Qin's true essence was still circulating in Arhat's body. At first, he didn't feel anything, but after a long time, he faintly felt the pressure of the world on him. This kind of pressure wasn't the kind of suppression, but some kind of rejection. It was as if the underground demon cave world innately rejected any living beings that didn't cultivate the demonic path. If it was other venerable Arhat or even great Arhat or earth immortals, they would have a headache in the face of this kind of oppression and rejection. They might even turn around and leave. Because this is not their home ground. If they stay here for a long time, their strength will be greatly reduced, and if they encounter a demon of the same level, it is very likely that they will completely die. But I'm different. Su Qin looked up at the sky, and a huge Buddha statue vaguely appeared in the depths of his eyes. Devil Buddha golden body. Rumble. In an instant, the huge Buddha statue in the depths of Su Qin's eyes suddenly changed. The left side was incomparably dark and demonic energy rose, while the right side was dazzling with golden light, full of Buddha intent. It was the Devil Buddha golden body that Su Qin obtained from signing in the forbidden area of the back mountain of Shaolin Temple. The Devil Buddha golden body was the fundamental cultivation technique of the Devil Buddha from 900 years ago in Shaolin Temple, and it allowed one to freely switch between Buddha and demon. Su Qin continued to operate the Devil Buddha golden body. In the blink of an eye, the golden Buddha in the depths of his eyes slowly turned pitch black, and a terrifying devil aura spread out in all directions. Dozens of li away from Su Qin. A group of demons from the demon cloud city suddenly opened their eyes and looked in a certain direction in shock. This aura, could it be that a demon king is coming to our demon cloud city? One of the demons muttered to himself with a look of horror on his face. Demon king. It's at least a high-level devil king. Another relatively old-age demon felt waves of emotions surging in his heart. The city lord of the demon cloud city was a demon king. He ruled over an area of 10,000 miles. Those who followed him would live and those who opposed him would die. His demon might was boundless. But in the eyes of this old-age demon, even the high and mighty city lord was inferior in front of that aura in the distance. One must know that the city lord has been in the demon king realm for hundreds of years. He has already cultivated to the extreme depths of this realm. Except for the legendary high-level demon king, the old-age demon couldn't think of anyone who could suppress the city lord in terms of aura. I'm afraid the demon cloud city will not be peaceful. The old-age demon glanced at the other demons and whispered, "This time, we will leave. Don't come back for 100 years. The rest of the demons looked at each other, barely suppressing the shock in their hearts, and spoke in unison. Meng Yuan Empire. On the endless grassland. Ha! Aura, I finally grasped that aura. A tall man looked up to the sky and roared, and a terrifying aura shook in all directions. When the people next to him saw this scene, they immediately knelt on the ground. Congratulations to the Imperial Preceptor for taking the last step. You are invincible in the world. Taking the last step? The Imperial Preceptor turned his head and glanced at them, then shook his head and said, I haven't yet, but now that the three elements have merged into one, I have the aura. I will be able to take that step in a year or a few months. The Imperial Preceptor's tone showed endless joy. Since stepping into the martial Tao, he has been waiting for this day for more than 100 years. Now that his wish has been fulfilled, how could he not be happy? The people next to him looked at each other, and their expressions were also very excited. How many years, how many years? A legend has finally walked out of the endless grassland. At this moment, the Imperial Preceptor's expression gradually calmed down. He looked at the people and said, Tell the Emperor, in 2 years at the latest, I will personally meet the legend of Chang and City. If the Meng Yuan Empire wants to unify the world and achieve a great cause, they must face the legend of Chang and City. And this day, the Imperial Preceptor couldn't wait any longer. Although the Imperial Preceptor doesn't know the depth of the legend of Chang and City, since the other party hasn't left this continent, his strength should be between the first and second heavenly layer. The Imperial Preceptor is confident in his vitality, his cultivation method is good at killing, and he carries the fate of the entire Meng Yuan Empire. Even if he can't defeat the legend, there is no problem in retreating. At the same time, the Emperor of Tang's palace, Cunning Palace. Empress Su Yueyun drank a mouthful of ginseng soup, her face slightly pale. During this time, Su Yueyun has been feeling a little uncomfortable, but the imperial doctors in the palace have not been able to find the reason. Su Yueyun can only guess that this winter is too cold. It's another winter day. Su Yueyun looked out of the window. At this moment, snow was faintly falling outside, and said softly, "Empress, this is the soup made by the imperial doctors. It is said that it can improve blood circulation and warm up the body. It should make Empress feel better." At this moment, a palace maid carefully walked over and brought a bowl of steaming soup to Su Yueyun. "Actually, I'm fine." Su Yueyun shook her head and said, "There's no need to trouble the imperial doctors." In fact, Su Yueyun has drunk a lot of this soup during this time, but it has no effect on her body. She still feels uncomfortable. "Empress, your health is important," the palace maid couldn't help but say. Although Su Yueyun is the empress, she is very kind to them, so all the palace maids and eunuchs in the cunning palace hope that Su Yueyun can get better as soon as possible. Seeing this, Su Yueyun couldn't refuse. Su Yueyun gently picked up the soup and was about to drink it. However, at this moment, Su Yueyun's face suddenly turned as white as paper, and even the hand holding the soup was trembling. Su Yueyun wanted to speak, but she felt as if her throat was being choked, and she couldn't spit out a word. The bowl of soup Su Yueyun was holding fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Seeing this scene, the palace maid's heart thumped, and her face also turned pale. She immediately shouted for help in a panic. "Oh no, Empress is sick." Chapter 161. The Empress had fallen ill. The news quickly reached the ears of the Emperor of Tang, Li Sheng. Immediately, the Emperor of Tang put down everything in his hands and rushed to the Palace of Earthly Tranquility. "Yun, are you okay?" The Emperor of Tang walked to the bed and asked with concern. Su Yueyun's complexion had recovered a little. Although she was not as good as a normal person, she could barely speak. "Your Majesty, I'm fine." "What? You're like this and you call it fine?" The Emperor of Tang suppressed the anger in his heart and turned to look at the imperial physician. "What's going on? What's wrong with Yun's body?" When the imperial physician heard the Emperor of Tang's tone, he trembled and hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, Her Majesty's body, Her Majesty's body." The imperial physician repeated the words for a long time, but he kept hesitating, not knowing how to say them out loud. When the Emperor of Tang heard this, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. If Su Yueyun was only feeling unwell, the imperial physician would definitely not have such an expression. Only if the imperial physician found it difficult to deal with would he be so hesitant. "Speak." "I'm listening." The Emperor of Tang took a deep breath and calmed down. "Your Majesty, there is a foreign object in Her Majesty's body. It is this foreign object that is constantly devouring Her Majesty's vitality and consuming Her Majesty's essence, causing Her Majesty to be like this." The imperial physician braced himself and said, "That's not what I want to hear." The Emperor of Tang looked coldly at the imperial physician. "Your Majesty," the imperial physician said carefully, "if you want Her Majesty to recover, you can only completely eradicate the foreign object in her body. However, this foreign object is produced in Her Majesty's body and is equivalent to Her Majesty's flesh and blood." When the imperial physician said this, he paused for a moment and continued in a trembling voice, "I can't think of any way to remove this foreign object." When the imperial physician finished speaking, he knelt on the ground. "I deserve to die. I deserve to die." "You should die." The Emperor of Tang left these words and then turned back to Su Yueyun. "Yunyang, you must be fine. There are so many imperial doctors in the palace. If one can't do it, I'll change to another one. If they can't do it, I'll cut them all down. Then, I'll offer a reward to whoever can cure you." The Emperor of Tang kept comforting Su Yueyun. "Your Majesty, you don't have to say any more." Su Yueyun shook her head and said softly, "I know my own body well. That imperial physician did nothing wrong." Su Yueyun tried her best not to cry, because she knew that once she cried, the blow to Emperor Li Sheng would be unprecedentedly great. "What do you mean nothing wrong?" The Emperor of Tang held Su Yueyun's wrist. I spend so much of my salary every year to support them. If something really happened to you, why should I support them? The Emperor of Tang's voice was hoarse, but every word rang in the ears of everyone around. When the imperial physician who was kneeling on the ground heard these words, his body trembled even more. He had a feeling that the Emperor of Tang would really order all the imperial physicians to be cut down. Your Majesty, Her Highness is not incurable. Her Highness can be saved. Her Highness can still be saved. The imperial physician immediately shouted. The Emperor of Tang heard this and glanced at the imperial physician. Think carefully. If you dare to talk nonsense in front of me, you won't be the only one to die. The Emperor of Tang's words made the imperial physician's scalp tingle. The imperial physician knew what the Emperor of Tang meant. The crime of deceiving the emperor would implicate 9 generations. If his next answer did not satisfy the Emperor of Tang, the consequences could be imagined. Your Majesty, this humble subject is not talking nonsense. This humble subject would not dare to talk nonsense. The imperial physician's teeth were chattering. None of the imperial physicians in the imperial palace can cure the imperial concubine's body. The imperial physician gulped and said loudly, but even if we imperial physicians can't cure her, the imperial uncle can. The imperial uncle saved His Majesty last time. His medical skills are divine, far surpassing us imperial physicians. I think the imperial uncle must have a way. As soon as the imperial physician finished speaking, the Emperor of Tang was stunned. Then, joy appeared on his face. That's right. I actually forgot about the third brother. The Emperor of Tang's eyes lit up as he muttered to himself. The yin qi that entered Su Yueyun's body and the anger that attacked his heart last time were all cured by Su Qin. In the entire palace, if there was anyone who was most likely to cure Su Yueyun, it could only be Su Qin. The more the Emperor of Tang thought about it, the more hopeful he became. What are you waiting for? Go to the right spring square and invite the third brother over. The Emperor of Tang glanced at the eunuchs around him and said in a low voice. He wanted to go and find Su Qin himself, but Su Yueyun was extremely weak at the moment. The Emperor of Tang could not bear to leave. Hearing this, a young eunuch immediately rushed to the right spring square. At the same time, in the majestic underground palace, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, a smile on his face. She's finally recovered. Su Qin exhaled softly. In order to create a divine sense clone, he forcibly divided nearly half of his divine sense. If it were any other martial arts legend, they would have been seriously injured on the spot. Even if they could recover, it would be 100 or 200 years later. One had to know that the loss of divine sense was not like the loss of the physical body. If you lost 10% of your divine sense, it would take a month to recover, but if you lost 20% of your divine sense, it would probably take half a year to recover. If you lost 30% or 40%, you might not be able to recover in decades. And once you lost more than 50% of your divine sense, no matter who it was, even Venerable Arhat, a martial arts legend, would fall into a deep sleep on the spot. No one knew when they would wake up. This time, Su Qin was stuck at 50% of his divine sense. Coupled with a large number of pills, he could recover so quickly. Just as Su Qin was considering whether to continue cultivating. Someone is going to break into the right spring square? Su Qin raised his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the East Palace. Outside the right spring square, the little eunuch from the Palace of Earthly Tranquility looked extremely anxious. After calling the imperial uncle a few times and receiving no reply, he braced himself and prepared to barge in. Although he might be scolded and blamed by Su Qin afterwards, he couldn't care less now that Empress Su Yueyun was in danger. Are you looking for me? At this moment, Su Qin's voice quietly came from behind. Imperial uncle? The little eunuch was overjoyed. He turned around and bowed deeply. Her Majesty is seriously ill at the moment. His Majesty ordered me to invite Imperial uncle over. Her Majesty? Su Qin's face changed slightly. The Emperor of Tang had been on the throne for more than a decade and had never taken in any concubines. In the entire palace, the only person who could be called Her Majesty was his little sister Su Yuan. Seriously ill. Su Qin's face was solemn. He extended his divine sense and instantly enveloped the entire palace. A moment later, Su Qin slowly retracted his divine sense and a strange look appeared on his face. Chapter 162. Just now, in that split second, Su Qin's powerful divine telekinesis covered Su Yueyun's body. I was wondering what it was, Su Qin muttered in his heart and sighed in relief. If Su Qin was not mistaken, Su Yueyun was suffering from the cancer that Su Qin remembered from his previous life. To anyone, whether it was Su Qin's previous life or this life, cancer was an incurable disease that had no cure. But in Su Qin's eyes, as long as Su Yueyun was not near Shoyuan, there was a way to save him. Imperial Uncle. Are you all right? Her Majesty and Her Majesty are still waiting. Seeing that Su Qin did not respond, the eunuch became anxious. Don't worry, take me there. Su Qin glanced at the eunuch and said casually. Yes. Hearing this, the eunuch immediately ran to lead the way for Su Qin. Su Qin arrived at Cunning Palace. Third brother. The Emperor of Tang immediately stood up and walked towards Su Qin. She. The Emperor of Tang's voice was a little hoarse, but he looked at Su Qin with hope. At this moment, Su Qin was his only hope. If Su Qin could not save Su Yueyun, the Emperor of Tang really did not know what to do. Su Qin walked straight to the bed and looked at Su Yueyun carefully again. Although he had already seen most of Su Yueyun's body with his divine telekinesis, he still had to look at him personally to be sure. Third brother. Is Yun all right? The Emperor of Tang waited for a while, and finally could not help but ask. Su Qin was just about to reply that she was fine, but he was interrupted by Su Yueyun in a panic. Your Majesty, I want to stay with third brother for a while. Su Yueyun looked at the Emperor of Tang and begged. Su Yueyun was worried. If even Su Qin said that she could not be cured, the Emperor of Tang would fall from hope to despair. The Emperor of Tang heard Su Yueyun's request, hesitated for a while, and nodded. Alright, I'll take him out now. A moment later, only Su Qin and Su Yueyun were left in the entire Cunning Palace. Su Qin did not speak. He used his divine telekinesis again and began to think about how to cure Su Yueyun as much as possible. If it was someone else, Su Qin naturally would not have this problem. He would directly use his true essence to eliminate the source of the cancer. Of course, the other party would definitely suffer a lot in the process. However, Su Yueyun was Su Qin's little sister after all. Su Qin naturally wanted to cure Su Yueyun in the best way. Su Yueyun saw that Su Qin did not speak and looked at her repeatedly. Her heart suddenly sank to the bottom. Finally, she forced a smile and said, Third brother, I want you to accompany me to the Imperial Garden to have a look. The Imperial Garden was the place where the Imperial Palace planted thousands of flowers for the Emperor and his concubines to see. Since Su Yueyun became the Empress, she would come to the Imperial Garden to admire the flowers if she had nothing to do. In the Imperial Garden, Su Qin and Su Yueyun walked slowly. Because it was winter, the thousands of flowers in the Imperial Garden had withered, and there was a sense of loneliness. After all, the Imperial doctors in the Imperial Palace had some skills. Although they were helpless against the cancer, they still made Su Yueyun feel better. At least she could walk. Third brother, after so many years, you're still the same. You haven't changed at all. But I'm about to become an old woman, Su Yueyun looked at Su Qin and said softly. Aging and youth are just superficial appearances. Don't worry about it. Su Qin said something that was rare for him. Over the years, in order to not let himself appear too abnormal, Su Qin deliberately whitened his hair a little. But even so, Su Qin still looked unusually young, whether it was in terms of skin or appearance. This made Su Yueyun very envious. After all, even if she was the Empress, she could not keep her youth forever. That's true, but how many people in the world can see through it? Su Yueyun smiled. Over the years, she often chatted with Su Qin. Of course, she knew that Su Qin did not care about the outside world. If you want to stay young forever, I can help you. Su Qin glanced at Su Yueyun, and his heart suddenly moved. He remembered that when he was at the Shaolin Temple he had received a face-retaining pill from signing in. However, for Su Qin at that time, the face-retaining pill was not as useful as a small recovery pill. At least the latter could be treated as candy for Su Qin to chew. As a result, the face-retaining pill was still placed in a corner of the system space. It was extremely disliked by Su Qin. Of course, although Su Qin did not like the face-retaining pill, he knew that for some people, the face-retaining pill was comparable to any magical pill. Third brother, you must be joking. Su Yueyun thought that Su Qin was joking with her, so she didn't pay too much attention to it. At this time, Su Yueyun was already prepared to be incurable, and she didn't care much about the so-called aging of her appearance. So many years have passed in a flash. I still vaguely remember that when third brother was still at the family Su, I liked to follow third brother to the back of the mountain to see the peach blossoms. Su Yueyun seemed to be immersed in some kind of memory. At that time, before Su Qin was sent to the Shaolin Temple, she was only 3 years old. Now that decades had passed, her childhood memories had long been blurred. But the only thing that could always flash through Su Yueyun's mind was the peach blossoms at the back of the family Su mountain, and the back of Su Qin, who had always walked in front of her and was constantly being chased by Su Yueyun. At that time, when the spring breeze blew, the peach blossoms at the back of the mountain all bloomed. It was so beautiful. Su Yueyun closed her eyes, and a smile appeared on her face. I don't know if I can take another look at the peach blossoms. Su Yueyun opened her eyes, and her voice was slightly melancholy. Peach blossoms were flowers that only bloomed in spring, but it was winter now, and there was less than half a year before the peach blossoms bloomed. And Su Yueyun really wasn't sure if she could last until then. You want to see the peach blossoms now? Su Qin turned to look at Su Yueyun and asked seriously. Seeing Su Qin's serious look, Su Yueyun couldn't help but laugh. But I also know that it's impossible. Su Qin shook his head slightly and took a few more steps forward. Since you want to see it, I'll let you see it. Su Qin's words made Su Yueyun slightly stunned. She didn't expect Su Qin to be so persistent that he wanted to let her see the peach blossoms that only bloomed in spring and winter. Third brother, Su Yueyun was just about to persuade Su Qin not to take it seriously. However, the next moment, Su Yueyun saw a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Su Qin walked slowly to a withered peach blossom, put his right hand on the branch, and said softly, "Open." In an instant, it was as if the god of spring had given an order. With Su Qin as the center, the entire imperial garden within a radius of 100 meters and 1,000 meters was filled with peach blossoms. They were bright and beautiful, and the fragrance of the flowers filled the air, making people feel as if they were in a sea of flowers in May. Su Yueyun opened her eyes wide and looked at Su Qin, who was in the sea of flowers, with a calm and emotionless look in his eyes. If I become Emperor Qing in the future, I'll repay the peach blossoms everywhere. P.S. During this period of time, I'm not in a good state. I didn't do the follow-up outline, so I didn't dare to push the plot forward. Now, there's no such problem. The follow-up outline has been done. I'm here to ask for monthly votes. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.